This is the Diverse Leaders Conversation Podcast, the only podcast for diverse leaders and founders, with your hosts, Dawn Morton-Young and Kat Wildman. Starting up and rising up against the odds.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Diverse Leaders Conversation Podcast. I'm Kat Wildman.
And I'm Dawn Morton-Young.
And today we are joined by the amazing Kevin Withane. Now, Kevin, will you please introduce yourself for everybody, because I will never do you justice.
Kat, Dawn, thank you for having me on. So I'm Kevin Withane. I'm the founder and co-managing partner of DiversityX. I have a full-time day job as a corporate lawyer in a FTSE 250. So I'm juggling quite a few things. So that's who I am. I think I'm more of a recovering lawyer is how I describe myself. So I'm reconnected with my soul.
Love that.
A recovering lawyer who is still practicing.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
So
I think that's who I am.
You're kind of coming at this as somebody that is, on one hand, a leader within your corporate role, and then on the other hand, a founder. And obviously, as you know, this podcast is about both of those groups. So it's really good to have somebody that sort of brings both of those things together on with us. And I'm really excited actually to tell us what DiversityX is, because I think that's something that people would really be interested to hear about.
Yeah, so DiversityX, I guess, is a couple of things, but first and foremost and always, it's a community for what I call underestimated founders. Most people will use the term underrepresented. I think they're wrong and I think I'm right. And the reason is there's plenty of female founders, people of colour founders, LGBTQ plus founders, disabled founders, neurodiverse founders, older founders, plenty of them. What there is underrepresentation is the equitable allocation of capital, and data shows that this category of founders is just deeply underfunded. And probably we're looking at single-digit funding in VC world.
Okay. So what does your community seek to kind of address?
I think as a community, for me, the most important part of it is it being a safe space for underestimated founders. I think the founders in the community probably receive higher rates of rejection, no feedback, almost ghosting, have stress and mental health issues that don't get addressed, like they don't have the support network. So it's a peer-to-peer support group, but we are over 300 and something founders in there, and global. So in some senses, it's a great way to have founders from around the world sharing their stories, their pain, their journey, their wins, their celebrations, and learning and supporting each other. So I'd say the safe space is one of the most important things. Like you can't use LinkedIn and go, we lost the business win today, or we did that, like, because potentially for those founders, investors are there. So they need that space. But also it's a place to go, look, I'd really love to be nominated for this award. Can anybody support me? And, you know, when we had the WhatsApp group, it was like done, pinging all day long. So I think that's really positive, because actually all these founders need people to champion them and sponsor them and support them. And the connections between them is just, I think it's incredible. So yeah, a safe space firstly, and I guess a place to learn, share, collaborate, all of that good stuff which you should get from a community, and ultimately advocate for underestimated
Yeah, and Kat and I are both members of the DiversityX community, and we've been there since the pinging WhatsApp group days, and it's obviously evolved now, and can really see the benefit. And everything that you've kind of just outlined are things that we want to also through this podcast bring to the fore. It's those kind of stories, it's those kind of things, so that other founders from diverse groups or backgrounds know that they're not alone, that it's not just them that are going through these things or facing these barriers or issues or, and so, yeah, it's a great community. So thanks so much for coming on, Kevin. First thing I wanted to just ask you, what would you identify in terms of your diversity?
I never really used to think about this, but it used to frustrate me on the forms. Like you've got a job application or any of these forms, and it'd always have a colour. I was like, I never really see myself as this. I see myself as English, but it was British Asian, not English. Like, why can't I be English? I was born and bred here, went to school here, educated here, got my first jobs here. And there's no such thing as a second generation immigrant, right? You're either an immigrant or you're not an immigrant. If you're born here, you can't be an immigrant. So I'd describe myself as English, but, if you look at what other people will look at it, they'll say British English. British Asian. So I guess my diversity is I'm a brown guy. My mum's from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, and my dad's from Sri Lanka, but they found their respective ways here, I guess, as children of the colonies. And they met here, and me and my brother were born here. So, yeah, I guess a male as well. But yeah, that's I guess my diversity. Yeah. That's what it is.
I think
and you're a parent.
Oh yes, you're a parent. Yes,
I am a parent. Yeah, I love being a parent. Actually, no. Let me take that back. I absolutely love being a parent, but there are times when you want to put your head in a pillow and just scream.
I think we've all had that one.
Yeah. I would say this though. COVID, as terrible as that been for like certain dads, certainly for me, like you truly learn what mums do in the house. And I'm not saying not every household is like that, but I would say statistically and generally, women do the lion's share and then add in a few other animals' share of the load. It is so difficult. Like I cancelled a couple of calls this morning because I was watching Mali, whereas I see plenty of women turn up to their jobs with their kids in the background and just get the job done. So yeah. But throughout COVID and now being at home or like working from home, like you learn the lessons that you just didn't like. I didn't see it. So I don't think I fully appreciated just how intense true parenting is.
Yeah, that's amazing. That was an amazing observation. Also, I think you probably, I don't know. I'm going to ask you, would you go back to the way things were before? There's probably moments, I know with my husband, there's moments where he wishes he could walk out the door at 7 and come home at 7:30 after having maybe had a few client drinks, long lunch, come back and everything's sorted and the kids are in bed. But now it's like, now you've seen it, husband, you can't unsee it. So would you go back to the way things were before, or do you think largely it's been more positive changes?
For me personally, positive. Like I absolutely love it. For Claire though, she will say, you're home, but you go into your office early and you come out later. Like, you seem to be around more. But I think I get to go and drop my kid to school. I get to pick him up. I used to do that with my daughter when we lived in Asia. But I love it. Like, I want to have those little conversations that you have on the way to school, or on the way back from school, to see them smiling as they're running out of school, when that moment where they catch your eye and then realise that you're there. It's lovely. So I wouldn't change that. And also, just like with Mali, been around and just seen all the little stuff that he does and destroys. I wouldn't swap it. No, I couldn't ever swap that.
I think that's
Brilliant. No, I wouldn't
such
either.
I don't know, lovely perception of things, because you putting it into those words makes me think about my own experience, because I think sometimes as mums, because we're just doing, we don't necessarily always capture those moments. So for example, that you said when they catch your eye when they're coming out of school and they smile and run to you, because it becomes such a routine, it's just kind of like, come on, we got to get dinner done. That's kind of what's the next thing. That's what we're thinking about. But you sort of stripping it back like that from another perspective, it is, it makes us realise, I guess, makes me realise how blessed, I guess, we are as parents and as mums as well. So this was clearly the soppy part of our conversation today. We don't normally talk about nice soppy things on this show, do we, Kat? It's normally like hard hitting.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a hardness to this too, right? Because I remember Claire telling me about, like, she went to the park with Jude and a couple of parents are talking about their kids, and it's like, well, of course, like we help them read, and of course, like, it wouldn't be a thing that it wouldn't. I'm surprised that parents don't. I'm like, we're so privileged that we have the time, energy, and capacity to be able to sit there and just read with our child. Like, he's got a both the boys got like what's the word Claire uses, reading rich environment. And then I think about other kids, and then it's not. They've got amazing parents, but it might be a single parent, just amazing. But they have to work jobs to keep the lights on, to keep their kids warm and put food. It might not even be warm food, it's just food on the table and it's literally survival. And they're doing 2-3 jobs. And they just don't have the energy.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have the energy. It doesn't mean they're a bad parent.
Yeah.
But they're getting stigmatized in our society.
Yeah, shouldering the whole domestic load.
We do.
Yeah, because that's when we're now talking about that whole socioeconomic diversity, for want of a better expression, and the opportunities that even I would say that, as you've rightly said, Kevin, that we may be able to afford to our children. But I as well will notice the difference, because I am that single parent who doesn't always have the time to do things. My daughter's school's closed because their heating's not working, and so she's upstairs. And I was coming on to do this call today, and I had another meeting before that, and I've had to say, oh, you have to go and do this and wait until I finished, and then I'll come and and so not having those, I guess, that support available in the home. But there are thousands of children who have that situation, or much worse than that, in terms of and I think it's something that is not really addressed or spoken about. So for example, somebody that works, say, within your law firm, let's just say a company, and there is a single parent, could be a male, could be a female, that was working in your organisation, even with all of the well-being things that they have that's available for people, there isn't much things that are targeted to single parents or targeted to people who may be on basic administrative jobs or roles and not one of the high earners. And how is it that they survive within their household? What's going on for them from a mental capacity space, from, all of that type of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, and you think putting in that work context, most managers, like a direct manager, may think about it if you're lucky, and then you've probably got a decent manager who thinks about, well, what is the life? What is my team members, my colleagues' life like? Like, what can we do as an organisation to make it better, so that they're happier, healthier, and their well-being is taken care of, but also they'll deliver more. They tend to deliver more. But I think as you move up the chain and you're further removed from the individuals, that conversation becomes less and less. It's conversations on productivity, but not what drives productivity.
Because we're at that level, you're expected to just kind of suck it up, because your role almost becomes bigger than that. But I do think, going back to the COVID conversation, that COVID again became a bit of a mirror for people at all levels to see really our humanity, and that things happen. We had, Zoom conversations with kids running around in the background, and, people that unfortunately had loved ones that passed away, and managers were becoming much closer to that, because that was happening no matter where you stood. It didn't matter how much money you earned. It didn't matter what your grade was.
Yeah.
Those things affected everyone. And so I do think that we're in a better position now. And certainly I am seeing more kinds of humanitarian actions towards employees by companies, which I think is really encouraging.
Yeah, it is. I think a lot of companies still struggle, though, particularly right now is really difficult time there. It's not, for the most part, it's not the company's fault, right? Like, it's these macroeconomic, geopolitical issues that are driving things, but making basically the global business environment just difficult. But we live in a world of short-termism from a, everybody needs to be incentivized to do the right thing. I find that ridiculous, but it seems to be true. I hate it, but it's true. Like, we have to incentivize to do the right thing. What's in it for me? Like, it's always about what's in it for me. I don't get it, but we need that. But when you look at organizations, everybody's incentivized on short-term basis. So short-term results. Nobody's ever looked at, like, well, if you achieve this in 10 years' time, no, it's like 1 year, 2 year or 3 year cycles, like, and particularly at the top levels. So then it's like, well, where do we as lead? And I get that paradigm, that difficult issue of, I've got to deliver this to get my just rewards, but this other stuff I'm not going to see any benefits from. I may not even be here by the time the benefits come through. So I'm just going to focus on this because I can see it, I can measure it, and I can deal with it. And that's, I think, a huge part of the problem. And I don't know what the magic answer to that is, because otherwise I'd be minted. But I don't think there is a single answer, because I think every organization is like a living organism. It's unique. You can't replicate one organization to another, because ultimately that organization is built on people, and every single person that comes in is a different person. Even if, like, we're hiring the same people over and over and over from a diversity angle, but it's still, your organization will be different because the way people interact with each other is different. And that's why I always look at culture like a waves on a sea. It changes all the time as new people come in, or it can change the dynamic completely.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but that was exactly what I was just thinking, was around, this is about global culture. And it's almost like what would make a change would be the biggest culture change project known to man, where you're actually shaping the culture of countries rather than it being about companies. Because as much as the business world is there, it's still the governments and the society that drives the culture of a place. And so it's almost that way around. But whether we'd ever get there, I'm sure I saw something, Dubai were hiring like a culture change person for the company. They wanted to showcase Dubai as being, I've forgotten what it was. I remember looking at it thinking, okay, this is like a little bit innovative, isn't it? So
I think there are countries doing that at governmental level. Everybody, like, but then you look at like here, like, we've had how many reviews? And what was his name?
Sewell's, yeah.
Sewell's?
Yeah, Sewell.
Sewell's, right? like it didn't take any account of lived experience. It's like, oh, we're not. It's almost like, well, we're doing this as a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It's like, why? Look, we don't need to defend anything. We know what's happened. We don't have to hide from it. It's not about defending anything and like saying, well, sorry guys. Like it's about how do we move forward to make the world more equitable, fair, and equal for everybody, and just treating people like another human being. Like, how would you? I'm not a religious person, but doesn't the Bible say something like about treating your neighbour how you would want to be treated? I don't know the exact words. Well, but do we do that really? Like, do we do that? I don't know.
Goodness. Do you know what? If we did do that, we wouldn't need diversity and inclusion businesses because everything would be fine. But do you know what? That is the conclusion. We've got an ambassador certification, and that's a conclusion that everybody comes to at the end, which is when they send their reflections. Just don't assume that everyone on a particular group is the same, and give everybody the respect to be different and be who they are. And that's been a real revelation. That's what's coming out of it. It's like, these are human beings. Like, you cannot look at a human being and presume to know anything about them at all, really, when you think about it. So on that topic, Kevin, you described yourself as a brown guy. What have you found any benefits or barriers because of your appearance in the working world?
Both. I think from my gender perspective, I'm privileged deeply. You don't think about it, right? But then you come to realise your privilege. From my colour perspective, you know what? I don't even think I realised what... I knew I had experienced racism, but I didn't treat it as racism because I'd never been physically hurt. It was only when George Floyd happened, and we were living in Detroit at the time, so we could hear the helicopters, and we're sitting in bed with my wife, who's white, sitting in there, and we're watching Twitter and stuff like that, and all I see is police cars ramming people, black people, white people. It didn't really matter. People just done with the way it was. And that triggered something in me to reflect on what's happened to me. And it was only at that point, it was like, shit, it was racism. I just didn't call it out as that, but it was, because I always just, in my head, I thought, I haven't been physically hurt. I haven't been harmed physically. It's all right. This is just what it is to be a brown guy, You got the P word all the time when I was growing up, shouted from the buses, in North London. And I guess, Enfield at that time was in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, was still pretty white and not as diverse as it is now. And, we're just down the road from Edmonton and Tottenham. But it was quite, I guess, a conservative area. It's much more diverse now. You walk around there and it is truly a cosmopolitan, like it's a microcosm of the whole of Greater London in a sense. Like it is really like full of different things. And one of the best things about it is that's food, because you've got all of this diversity of food. It's incredible. You don't have to leave the country really. You could just pretty much go around the world just eating around London. But I would say, so whilst I experienced that, I would say in the world of work, because I don't think I think that Asian kids, South Asian kids probably had it worse, racism, than maybe the black kids did. But in the world of work, I think it's completely different. I think you're treated differently. And so we were treated differently to the black employees. And I would hear racism directed at black employees, but not me. Now, my wife would say, I've been in the room when people like you've left, and I hear what they say when you're gone. I've heard what they say when you've gone. Like, not talking about me personally, but like she's been in that situation before. So, it's a real difference. And actually, funny enough, when I was coming back, talking to a friend in the US, South Asian as well, he's like, Kev, why are you going to go back? And like, we had these conversations about racism a lot. I said, because, I don't have a voice here. At least I can vote in that country. I'm never going to, I never want to be an American citizen. I never want to have that passport. I never want to call myself an American. Happy to be a guest there, so I'd rather leave. And he said, but, it's going to be worse for you there, because that was his perception. Like, he obviously experienced or saw racism here, which in the US you see less of as a South Asian. What we experienced there was the hatred of me in a mixed race family. That's another, and then there's another level of, hold on, you're mingling. Like I never, to be honest, I walk around like with these rose tinted glasses. I'm like an optimist. I like to try and find the positives in everything. And there is generally, for most parts, I can always try and find one little thing. But my wife would notice it. She said, we're being stared at. I don't see it all the time, but she's like, we get looked at all the time. And I was like, oh, okay. That's hard. Like, now it's affected. Like, she's, I guess, experiencing what that's like.
Yeah. I think that there's so many things there, because when you refer to yourself, or you would identify as being English, so I was always taught growing up, whether this be right or wrong, that I am Black British, and I'm Black British because I'm only in this country by virtue of British colonialism. So the reason that I was able to be born here, the reason that my parents were able to come here, was because of being part of the British Empire, not being an English person. And English, the identification of English for me was always a white person born within England. And I think that's just how I've always carried my identity. And if you ask me further, I'm Black British Caribbean, or I will say, British Caribbean, something along those lines. But then we've got the difference of race and ethnicity intermingling in that as well. Yeah. So, but yeah, so I did find that interesting. I don't know. That's just what I was told, and it kind of made sense to me. Yeah.
No, that's what I was told, but I'd be like, no. Like, if you look in France, there's Black French people there. We don't hear them going, the Black French people. We're just the French, right?
Yeah.
Thierry Henry. Everybody loves Thierry Henry, right? It's just a French dude. Like, he's a French guy. Just like his mate Bobby. I know in America there's like they use the term African American, which I think is deeply wrong as well. Like, at the end of the day, like, that's a country of just immigrants, unless you're a direct lineage to the natives. You're all immigrants there. The country, but you call yourselves American.
Yeah, they will say that, but but most Black people will say African American because they came directly from Africa to America. So whereas we came, that's where they would say African Caribbean is for those that came from Africa and went to the Caribbean. So I think that's kind of where it comes from. And I guess it gives them their sense of identity. But what I think as well was interesting is, where you said, you just see yourself as you don't, because you're not putting these labels on yourself, other people's, you're kind of surprised by other people's labels. Like, sometimes you don't notice it. And that's where your wife, who's coming from, I guess, the majority, is noticing those things. So I guess it's just kind of, regardless of how we see ourselves, and I'm going to assume that people from the transgender community will feel the same way, that regardless of how we see ourselves, people are always going to have their label for us. And so I guess it's about how And you're an example of this, about how rooted we can be in our own beliefs about ourselves so that it doesn't matter. And I think that that's what you've kind of been able to achieve, really.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think though, when I sort of use that term recovering lawyer, but that sort of reflects that, is that I tried to be like everybody else. And everybody else was the white people, like coattailing them, hanging out for no, you know what? Like, actually, we were talking about one person in particular. My wife would be like, you always used to like get annoyed when I say call that person out for what they are, and you say, oh, they're a really good person. But now you recognise that they're not a good person. I was like, yeah, I know, but I was trying to get ahead, I guess, because all my life, like, I use that term underestimated as well, but I've had the same thing at school. Director of sixth form, Withane, what do you want to be? What are you going to study at university? Law, sir. Laughed and literally said, you'll never be a lawyer. Turns out that my law career was probably longer than his teaching career, as he got fired for being an alcoholic.
Have you sent him like a card with your like credentials on?
No, I wouldn't know where to find him. But
Yeah.
I guess it drove me. But then, in the same thing, like going through, like I trained to be a barrister. I was doing a bar course, and I got I got some interviews, and like someone said to me, Kevin, you're the token there. They literally said you're the token. Like they have to quota the chambers that you've got interviews for, and you're probably a token to so they can say, well, we actually interview X people, right? I was like, no. Literally, even in the interview, in a waiting room, another about like student barrister at the time, I guess, said, "Oh, you're here so they can you want to tick the box candidate." Oh. She's like, "Fuck it," but nice. All right, and lo and behold, they're probably right. I'd like to say I performed badly, so I used to say that it's me, like I wasn't a good enough candidate. But you know what? I think I was a good candidate. I just was wrong colour. It is what it is.
Is it also because I guess the rumour that we've heard about those sort of the upper echelons of the legal society, it's also around what university did you go to and who are your family, how much money do they have, that type of thing. So, maybe if your surname was Sunak, you may have found that you passed the bar because perhaps your background, I know nothing about your background, but perhaps your background may have been different. Do you think that could have played a part or not in your case?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at where I think there's been a huge change over the last 20 years at the bar. But where are the black judges? Where are they? Come on. We have a problem. Like, there's a lot around socio-economics, but you know what? If you're going to you need a judiciary that's representative of the people, just like you need a government that's representative of the people. The judiciary is a check and a balance. They should be representative. But is it? No. 100%. And I know a really, really, really great criminal barrister who applies and doesn't get an opportunity. There's so few to be King's Counsel. And you're like, how is this possible? And so when you think where the judges are going to be chosen from, they're going to be chosen from the top level of barristers. They're not there, and they're not doing it. You need, but also, I'd ask people, lawyers who wanted to work, deliver legal services. It's like, I'd say to them, draw a 3-mile radius around your lovely shiny office and go out to the public, like the state schools in those areas, because within 3 miles of every shiny offices, there's a ton of poverty. Go into those schools on careers day or something and talk to the kids. I know you don't have a reason to go there because you don't have a kid there. Doesn't matter. You go and give those kids the opportunity to dream and hope that they can work in your nice shiny offices, because the chances are the lawyers that they hear about are probably criminal or family, generally, or personal injury, right? That's it. They don't know that they could work in that big shiny building and doing a job. That's your job, not like a janitor or office other clerical worker, but being a lawyer. Give them that hope that they can do that. Now the entry price is the entry price, academic rigor. But if they have the hope that they can get there, and if you make it possible that they can get there, they'll get there because they want it. But we need more people doing that. We need those law firms to take, and there are some. Like I talked about this initiative, a law firm here, and they said, "Oh, we're doing some stuff. Like we're getting out." And I said, "Like you have to be proactive. You can't wait for people to come to you. They don't even know where to go. Like you need to go to them." That's it. Like, more needs to be done.
The socioeconomic divide in this country is sadly only going to get worse if the government don't, or if they keep cutting schools off at the knees, because there is just absolutely no funding available for anything. And it's relying on the socioeconomic status of the parents of the kids who go there to support the schools. And if you're in a low socioeconomic area, they're gonna massively suffer. What can we do, Kevin?
I don't know, but what's ridiculous? Well, look at the Scandinavian countries. Now, I'm not saying they're an epitome of great diversity or anything, but from an educational point of view, they have been investing a lot, and now they're starting to see the rewards of that in the generations that's coming through. Claire, my wife, said to me, she's like, I can't believe some of this stuff that's happening. I thought we were supposed to be one of the richest countries in the world. Same with the United States. That country, they profess to be the greatest nation on earth. Like, they all shout it about it. I kid you not, getting an Uber or a Lyft there, who are my drivers? Teachers. Why are you doing this? Well, we don't get paid during the holidays, like we're on these fixed term. Oh, and they were telling her, like, you go into Target, they've got aisles full of teaching resources. What? Target? Why? Like, it's like going to Asda. Why would you have all the teaching resources in Asda? Like, surely the schools just get it. Oh no, the teachers pay for it. So what that means is, if your teacher is wealthy and has money, your classroom is likely to have better resources than if your teacher
doesn't make any sense.
Is poorer. Exactly. They don't invest in it. But that's a country that, with the size of its population, with the resources it has, should be throwing all the money, because if they lift all of those people, give them all solid
100%.
grounded education, they will lift their entire country. And they will live up to their reputation as, or not their reputation, their self-professed shout out that they're the greatest nation on earth, because they've got all the resources, they've got the people, and if you've got that, the people and the productivity, they are educated, and also got that mindset to like want to continue learning, it will drive them in a way that nobody would be able to catch up. You look at the Scandinavian countries, they spend a ton of money on education. And they tax high for it. So people are like, oh, it's a socialist. Well, no, it's actually really smart thinking, because it's actually building their future. And it's those people who are going to work, particularly as we've got an aging population now. Who's going to pay for all of the people? Like, we need people doing the jobs and earning enough. Because actually, if you're not earning enough, then the coffers are just going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. But we've got a bigger population to fund.
Oh my goodness. Kevin for Prime Minister. When's it happening, Kevin?
Yeah, I think they're it's not an honourable role now. Do you know what I mean?
You'd have to just come back and make it honourable, Kevin. Prime Minister Withane.
Oh my goodness. I love it. I think there should. It's long overdue that we've not had a Prime Minister called Kevin. What a strong and solid name for a strong and solid leader of a country. I would love that. Can we be Can we be in your cabinet? I'd love that. We'll change the world.
Well, we can do it in other ways. We just need to. I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? Like government, particularly this government, looks back. Honestly, like I've grown up in the 80s and like late 70s, 80s, and 90s in this country. I don't remember this many food banks.
Didn't it exist when I was growing up?
No.
I
I don't even remember. Yeah, like I remember hearing about like the butter mountains they talked about with being in the EU. Do you remember all of that stuff? Like, because of the farmers were overproducing because they were getting subsidies. Okay, fine, but this is insane. And it's like, why? Like, we had this debate in our house. Like, why aren't the government doing anything? It's like my wife says, because they don't have to, because they know that people are doing it. Because we've got these food banks, we've got all of this. They don't need to do anything because we do it.
Adverts, charity adverts for something to do with poverty, food, clothing. I literally look at it and I say, where is the government? Where are these people that we pay millions of pounds to collectively to keep us and our country safe and well? And when the answer then comes back that they don't have the money, I say, but then where has the money come from for now? I'm hearing MPs can put on their expenses, their Christmas parties, and the wars that they're helping people with in other countries, and all of these things that they're doing, bailing out the banks for the millionth time, all of these things that they have the money to be able to do. Why can they not make sure? I was driving through central London yesterday and I saw the people lined up on the side of the road with tents, sleeping on the side of the road, like a long. And so somebody's gone out and given these people tents to sleep in, probably a charity. And I'm just sitting there. There's so many abandoned buildings across London. Loads of empty properties, loads of empty houses. I do not understand. And I get that it's not just about some of these people having somewhere to stay. And some of it is a psychological, mental health things that have gone on, which some of them refuse housing. I understand that. But whether it's counselling and therapy services, whether it's housing, whether it's food, make it or companionship, there is something that this government can be doing to help stop the problem that's being had at the moment. And I'm watching people, I'm hearing people all the time telling me that they're not turning on the heating because they're so worried about the gas prices. We're talking about the elderly, and the elderly would rather risk killing themselves essentially through hypothermia than being in debt to the gas and the energy companies. And that for me it's insanity. It's insanity that we would allow this to happen.
I think that it's going all the way back to Kevin's original point about the short-termism of everybody, because every leader who comes in, they're looking at, right, I've got 4 years in order to be a hero and retire from this having been, short-term gains. Like, look at our GDP going up. Look at this. They're not things like, the systemic changes that would be needed in order to put in proper supports to the people who need it. We need to treat the cause and not the symptoms. And this whole dreadful cycle of people being born into poverty and carrying on, and all the things that go along with that, and one in however many will make it out of poverty and get to, and then they're lauded, and it's a great series, it's a great book, and it's a TV show. But that is the reason why we all know about that one person, that those 2 people who made it out, is because it's so completely unusual. Because the government can get away with not doing anything, keep the poor down, but no. We have come to the end of our time. And I'm sad about it.
Yeah,
I want to carry on talking. Oh, I could carry on talking.
Kevin's got to be on our round table.
To you forever, but
he's got to be on our round
definitely.
table.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have.
We're gonna have. I think in our year anniversary, Kat, we're gonna have a little panel discussion, and it will probably be like a 90-minute episode, and we'll just put the world to rights and talk about the great things that we're doing.
Yeah, sure. I'll
Before
join
you
on
go,
that.
though, Kevin, I would like to ask, obviously, as you said, you're a man with loads of experiences from all different kind of dynamics. So what advice would you give to somebody else that's maybe, let's say the younger you, the 16-year-old you, the 21-year-old you, what advice would you give to them as coming up as a founder and also looking to be a leader?
I'd say don't lose sight of who you are because for any reason at all, because you'll get pulled. And like I did, like the stuff I saw, I didn't stand up for people. I should have. In hindsight, I should have, but I didn't. And then I tried to be like people I'm just not like. And what for? Money, like that little extra bit, but it doesn't get you everything. And I realise that now in the 40s, cheapers. Like, it's a lifetime in some senses. So I'd say peel back the onion, learn who you are, and that's in some senses as a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old. That's really hard because you still have to find yourself. But there's a core of people, and it doesn't change. And you know, even if you're in hard circumstances and you have to do some stuff because you're in those hard circumstances, be good. Like think about other people and the effect that you have on other people. Stay true to yourself and use that as your guiding anchor.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. It was great. Kat, any closing remarks for today?
Thank you so much, Kevin. I think you're very wise, Kevin. I would that would be exactly the same advice that I would give to my younger self as well. But I do think that we needed to go on those journeys of self-discovery in order to get to be the people we are and atone for the things we did in the past. I think that's a lot of why we all do what we do, because you look back and you think, I don't want anyone to go through what I went through, and So yeah, very good, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Kevin, and we will see you at the round table.
For sure, and thank you for having me on. It's
Thank
been
you
a real
so
pleasure chatting
much.
to you both.
Bye.